On this episode of Let's Pull on That Thread, I'm excited and really grateful for my first guest, John Abel. At the time of filming, he was a CIO at Veritas, but he recently took a new role as CIO at Extreme Networks. I chose John because ever since the very first meeting, which was an interview, he and I have had great conversations that are extremely thought-provoking and insightful for me on topics such as leadership and IT organizational management. And on this episode, we talk about the increase in CIOs becoming CEOs, IT as a strategic differentiator to companies, diversity within IT, and John's perspective on the skills you need to be successful in today's IT organizations. It's a great chat, and as always, I hope you find it valuable, and thank you very much. All right. Well, John, thank you very much for agreeing to have a chat with me. I really appreciate it, and for being the first person on my my video series and being the guinea pig through this process. You and I have had some really insightful conversations since I interviewed for this role. It's almost been 2 years, I believe, and you and I had a really good interview. And one of the things that you and I aligned on was a comment I made, which was, I don't see myself as an IT person. I see myself more as a business person that works in the IT industry. And that was something that, if I recall, you were like, that's kind of how I describe myself. And what's been interesting is that has been like the thread through most of our conversations since then. And even I would even go so far as to say, that's how I've seen you run the IT organization here at Veritas. So, I think it would be interesting to understand, how did you come to that perspective about yourself first and foremost? Because for me, it was a long journey, but I'd be curious to see how you got there as well. If you have any thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, first of all, let me say, Justin, thank you for having me on the program, and absolutely delighted to be your guinea pig, so to speak. I think this is incredible good stuff that you're doing and sharing the insights. Yeah, the IT. I'm not an IT guy, or I'm not a technical guy. I'm more of a business person. I loved it when you said that when we first met, and I was interviewing you for your role to join our team. And I arrived at that perspective kind of halfway through my career, as I worked for people who, CIOs, other CIOs and leaders who mentored me. And, I used to always hear people say, don't go after the bright, shiny objects for technology's sake. It's more about business results. And the more I adopted that, the more I used that as working with other CEOs and other business leaders, the more that I found I was able to, as a CIO and an IT leader, improve the relevance of IT in that organization, which is what my job is. And so, and as things evolved, what I would say is that has become more and more prevalent. And actually now I would say every CIO I talk to talks more about business results than technology. So I think we were just a little bit ahead of the game, which actually has helped me in my career. And there are still a lot of CIOs out there today who think technology first and not business outcomes first. That's something I have prided myself on. And so that's really how I came around to it. I just kind of, it's one of those things, it's kind of like the emails that CIOs or IT departments send out. And you and I have talked about this many times. Yeah. No one reads the emails from the IT department. That's why we do videos like this.
Right.
So no one really cares about the technology. What they do care about is how you're making their life better. What they do care about is what business outcome, or the revenue or the cost of the company and things like that. So it's kind of worked out well, for the companies I've worked at, I think, and myself from a career perspective.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I think you said something that was interesting. Like, there's some CIOs who still think technology first, and they're just very, I would say, keep the lights on, operational, new shiny thing equals business value, rather than business value, what could we do to help that business value part, right? Yeah. And you said something at Veritas Vision Days, I think it was 2019 or last year maybe. I guess it had to have been 2019.
2019 when we were able to travel.
When we were able to travel, yeah. You made a comment there. I was reading the transcript on that, and you'd said more CIOs are becoming CEOs. And that was really shocking to me, because that's kind of been my shining North Star, is like, we need to start to break that barrier down. And I was surprised by that, because I hadn't paid attention to those stats or figures. But I think an IT person, a business person who just happens to work in IT, is helping to break that down. are you seeing that more prevalently? You know, what signs are you seeing that that's becoming more prevalent and that mentality is actually helping drive that change? Or is there something else that's getting CIOs into the CEO position?
Yeah, there's two things I would say that predominantly are kind of causing that to happen. And it's still like CEOs are still, majority of them are still coming out of either perhaps a sales organization type of sales or marketing type of thing, where they know the kind of sector that the company is operating in, or they're coming out of more a product type organization. But CIOs are evolving into COO and CEO roles more than they ever have done today in the past. And really, primary two reasons that I've observed for that. First of all, boards who are generally appointing CEOs are looking for people who have worked highly cross-functional across an entire organization. So they know a little bit about the supply chain, the finance, the HR, the marketing, the sales, the product engineering. They know about all of that. But more importantly, if you actually ask a lot of CEOs, they will say they're kind of like they orchestrate the band. They are the people who have a really good team, and their job is to make sure that they're conducting the band, right? They're making sure that the whole thing is working in unison. And so it's a very highly cross-functional, diplomatic skill set that is required. And that is exactly what you need when you're the CIO, because you've got to interact with every function of the leadership of the company, and you're also conducting the organization. So that's one thing. So that just cross-functional aspect and understanding. What has happened of late, we've heard the expression, every company is now a digital company. We've heard the expression, data is the new oil, or data is the new gold. And who better than either a chief digital officer, chief information officer, chief data officer to be propelled into the role of CEO, because companies are now realizing the importance of data in their organizations. So that's not only propelled the role of the CIO further up and in terms of importance in an organization, but boards have suddenly looked at that and go, that's what the future of our business is all about, right? The future of our business is all about data. Therefore, who better than to be the next CEO than perhaps the CIO?
That's interesting. I think what I've taken away from that is it's almost the pendulum is starting to swing pretty heavily in the CIO's favor, because it's a natural job function to like interface with all those different departments and organizations. Whereas the traditional tracks, they've got to do stints in each of those to get out of their silo, or I shouldn't say silo, but out of their organization. So I see.
It used to be like it used to look. You've been doing it as long as I have, and I've been doing this. I think it's 30 years now this year. This role has changed dramatically, and for many years, peers of mine, I never had this problem, but peers of mine, I hear them say, "Oh, if I just would have a seat at the table," and it's like, well, you've got a seat now. It's probably bigger than most others. Which is why you're seeing CIOs now report into CEOs and be a prevalent. That never used to also happen. It used to be under the CFO very often. It was like and so it's kind of like the IT department. When I started out IT at high school, we were a shoot off. Now, this is before PCs were invented, so I'm showing my age here. But IT was a sub-function of the math department. And it's kind of like when I started out my career, IT was a sub-function of the finance department. It is, and today, IT is like very prevalent, in all organizations.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've always kind of viewed that as not to tell the story, but a data point on a corporation's importance and modern mentality around the value of IT. Are they truly leveraging IT as a strategic asset if it's reporting up to the CEO? And that was one of the questions I had for you. I'm like, oh, did you get, because when I was interviewing, your role reported to the CEO. And I was like, ooh, I like this, because it's telling me you have a seat at the table. And it's not, black or white. If you're not, then you're not. But it's a good indication. And it's interesting, right? Because when you reported into finance, I always thought about the history of IT, that, IT came in and it was very optimization technology. Oh, we can make things go faster, quicker, better. Yeah. And it just naturally made sense to put it up under the CFO. Oh, when you need to save some money, call the IT guys. They can automate something or, do something.
Absolutely. 100% correct. That is the perception. And then, people like us, like people like me would probably start going, you really don't want to work for a job where the job reports to the CFO, because the only thing the CFO is going to use you for is, a cost reduction exercise.
Yeah.
Whereas we know, working here working where we work is that it's much more than that. And if anything, especially what we've achieved over the last couple of years, improving revenue, improving margins, and not just being a cost reduction exercise.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Value add, strategic
yeah.
differentiator. I think I'd done some research a while back, and this has been a while, but I'd seen, and it was very cursory level, but you started to see companies that were, this IT was strategic in nature, starting to outperform their peers on the market, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
that started, I haven't seen any more research on that. Have you? It feels like such a no-brainer to look at that, but I haven't, it's hard to find.
Not directly, but I mean, I did a little analysis recently on my own, and I won't mention the names of the companies here, but there were companies I had looked at, with this move of things to the cloud, and IT being I call it a more strategic play in the company, and there were companies I had looked at who I had been engaging with for 20 plus years. And I looked at companies who I think in the last 5 years have used their IT function and have used their engagement with their customers, I'm being customer of them, dramatically differently, and how they engage, and not be an ambulance chaser, and be a partner, and use tools and automation to know about what's going on at the company I work at or with me individually, and so they can just serve a lot better. And those companies, their stock price has skyrocketed in the last 5 years. And then I look at other companies who really are still engaging with me in the same way they engaged with me 10 or 15 years ago, and they're flat to down over the last 5 years. And that is the difference. And it's companies that are leveraging data and engaging with customers. I would argue, look at your own life, look at the consumer world. They're doing it better than anything. Banking, companies like Netflix, Amazon, even the social media companies, they know more about you than you go, how did that commercial just happen to pop up at this spontaneous time when I happen to be thinking about it? That is not by random choice, right? And so that's companies leveraging data, leveraging their IT function to really drive a different type of behavior and type of engagement with their customers. That's what IT can do for you. And that is why the role of the CIO today, I think at certain companies where it's been recognized, is more prevalent now. This is the best and most fun time I've had in my career right now. It's just amazing, because we have the compute power, the data storage to do massive things with massive amounts of data, and really, really drive a difference for companies. It's very exciting.
Yeah. One of the comments you made me think about just my own experience through the IT industry. I remember when we used to be the subject matter experts on everything technology.
Yeah.
And then one day somebody showed up and asked me about something that I knew nothing about. And after that happened a few times, I just remember thinking, oh man, like the first time you take it as like, oh my gosh, I'm not good. I'm messing up. These people are showing up. But then it quickly realized, I'm like, oh man, the software titles alone were growing so fast. So our role had to change. Like we had to become consultants and be like, we're not going to know everything. Those days are done. And I think to your point, I think some people figured that out and some people didn't. And, granted, that was in the late 90s, probably early 2000s.
Yeah.
After the .com bust, and when there was just websites galore showing up and people tiptoeing into that, the applications online concept.
Yeah. Your Salesforce and your ServiceNows and your Workdays, and they're actually engaging with people in the business. And that is so true too. And actually it's a thing I often bring up for CIOs, or when I talk to CEOs, I go, look, I might be the CIO and I might be responsible for, the enterprise applications and the overall data stewardship and security for the company and so on and so forth. But, people used to always say to me, when are you going to shut down that shadow IT, John? And I'm like, we're not shutting anything down. We're going to work with these folks because they have a need that wasn't being served by anyone, and they went and did it themselves, or they are subject matter experts. Marketing in particular, so many applications in marketing, and not called shadow. You call it shadow IT if you want, but they're smart people, and they shouldn't be like told by an IT department or CIO, you can't do that. That's also an old school.
Old school
You better to
mentality.
partner with them. Exactly. You better to
Yeah.
partner with them, work with them. And the CIO today is really about bringing all of those components together, being the integrator. Back to your original question, like why do you become the CEO? You are a facilitator. You're kind of like the politician that can bring a lot of people. You know, you got to be crossing the digital divide and shaking hands. So
Yeah.
that's why I kind of did a little stint in politics as part of my career too, right? So.
Oh, did you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I served 6 years on a public school board. I got publicly elected.
Oh, wow.
Got reelected. Got a new middle school built and all sorts of things here in my local community, which is something that's important for me. How giving back and education of folks and mentorship is important. So
yeah.
And I realized like politics is not the life for me. So
not for you.
6 years was enough.
That's interesting. Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
There you go.
Yeah. So I think this topic is interesting, right? When we talk about it at CIO level, it's very high level, and I'm sure the people that will potentially watch this will be like, "What does that mean for me?" And so one of those questions is, what should people take away from that, from a skills, and things they should try to learn if they want to move into an IT profession? And I'll preface this with a little bit that there was a CIO spotlight done on you from IDG, and you made a comment in there about the data scientist, and you've already talked about it, right? Data is the new currency for us, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that for people who are trying to get into IT and they want to be successful? And
I think it has changed, as we just said. The role of the function has changed, and therefore the skill sets that are important have changed dramatically, in my opinion. Many years ago, to your point that you were just previously making about that, IT used to be, hey, the technically smart guys, that's where they go, right? Mm-hmm. They actually go into engineering, and then I always used to say the kind of the B grade guys go into the IT department. So engineering guys like it when I say that, so because they kind of like, he's funny, and then you get along with them. So I actually think today it's more about, and so the technical ability to be a developer, you kind of went through the traditional role of like a developer, an analyst, program project manager. You go on up the career ladder within the IT function. Today, the role of any IT professional, I'd argue, the number one role to advance their career and come into it is all about communication. The ability to interact with people, the ability to be a salesperson, the ability to be open, transparent, and a good communicator, and break things down. And you still have to have a logical mind so that you can break things down into logical steps. But the ability to influence and bring people together, that sales ability is actually the number one skill. That's what I look for in any person, no matter what level of seniority or level in the organization they're coming into an IT department. So previously it used to be this guy like C++, or this guy's got Salesforce, or this guy knows Oracle, or is the best DBA on the planet. And it's like technology and software has improved so much that the actual technical ability you need to operate most software platforms these days has become less and less technical. So you don't need the degree of nth kind of level detail to understand how the intricacies work. You just, you still need some of that, but the ability to communicate and influence those skill sets are the things that are going to propel you more and advance your career more, I think. And that's what more and more companies are looking for. And even more so in the CIOs, because I think I'm probably one of the first generations that are going through it. I'm getting late in my career at this stage. So, I'm more looking at the back end and kind of thinking about retirement, but the skill sets, I think, of my generation were more about your technical know-how rather than your influence. And I think one of the things that has served me well is people have said to me many, many times, I think you included, have said, you should think about a career in sales. And it's like, I love talking with people. I love being with people. I am a people person. I've never been a technology person, as you know, but I understand technology and I know what it can do. And it's back to the original question, business outcomes and people skills. and the technology comes actually kind of last, because that will continue to evolve and change. Those other things never change.
Right.
So yeah, so learn how to talk, learn how to be a good person, get comfortable doing things like this, get comfortable being vocal. And it's a shame in a way, because given the pandemic, that's the skill set that we've been able to practice less, the ability to be with other people and be good around other people. And can't wait to get back to it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of what you said resonates with me, just in terms of that interest to be with, like, get to know people and, talk to people and learn what they're doing. And, I ran IT for a for a research organization, partnered with the VA for a while. And I loved walking around that campus, talking to the scientists and the people that work in there, like, well, what are you doing? We had people sending stuff up to the International Space Station. I mean, that stuff was really cool to learn about. So, yeah. It's interesting. The other thing, like, from an organization standpoint, right? Like, you said something like about yourself, like the older generations, making their way through their careers. But it's interesting because there's this tension in the IT industry of the people who've been in the industry for a long time who are having trouble adapting to that and that ability to really get out there. And you look at the composition of teams, and, you and I talked about this on, like, where are we focusing skills? And, to your point, and for those of people that might be listening, it would be interesting, like the very technical, there's not very many senior technical people. You just don't need it anymore. You need a couple of people at a high level to make sure it's architected and engineered properly. But most of the people that are driving massive change are those ones that are good at communication, good at change management, good at getting out there and interfacing with people. So
no, you're completely correct. I mean, and I actually, as again, I think I told you this many years ago, coming from Ireland, where I'm originally from, and I always say the gift of the gab and the Irish people is what's allowed me to be successful at what I do. I went back to my old high school a few years ago, and I went and actually gave to 15, 16, and 17-year-olds a pitch that, in Derry, Northern Ireland, and said to them, one of the reasons I got to where I am, because when I sat where they are sitting, I had no idea that I was going to be the CIO of a multi-billion-dollar Silicon Valley, tech company. That was the last thing in my thought. And I kind of wanted them to know that, the world is out there for them. And once you get outside of Ireland in particular, where a lot of people have those really good social skills, right? Everybody likes the Irish. You find that it's not natural. And so you go to a place like the United States or other parts of the world, and you find that there are people pretty reserved and they don't know how to do it. And it's a hard thing to teach. So I think it's a skill set that, many more people should try to perfect as they start out, whether they're in high school, whether they're in college, just starting out in the career. I get a lot of guys who are starting out in their career, and whether they're in sales or they're in marketing or they're in IT, and they ask me, how do you get to be a C-level title? And I said, well, you need a little luck, to be fair. You work hard, you have a plan, you stick to things, you don't give up. But one of the biggest things is you know how to interact with people and be respectful, and don't have an ego, and just be nice, be humble, right? Humble and hungry. An old CEO at a prior company used to use that all the time. Be hungry, but be humble. And I love that expression. So
I have a little pad here. I'm taking notes while we talk. I'm just writing that one down. Hungry and humble. That's cool.
Hungry and humble. Yeah. And so
that says a lot, actually.
It does.
Yeah. You just let that sink in for a second. Like,
and that's what I've done throughout my career. Right? You work for people, and I've tried to adopt the best of, like, people that I've worked for, that I've respected and thought, or look at people maybe a tier or two above and go, oh, so that's how they interact, that's how they behave. And if it's something that resonates, then you pull some aspects of that and you meld it into your own kind of skill set. And that's what's allowed me to be very successful in my career.
Gotcha.
So that's why again, when we met, I said to you, I have a way of kind of looking at people going, this person could go the whole distance, right? And so people who have worked for me, there are several of them who are now their own CIOs of large companies, sometimes larger than the one I'm currently at. And that to me is one of the best things from an outcome of my career, looking at people grow and seeing people, like, to have people who I've had a little bit of helping hand perhaps in their career, putting them in the right slot, and they've taken off and now they're their own CIOs, I think is phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
That is really, really cool. And you see the potential. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You made a comment. You went back to Ireland and spoke to high school students?
high schools, yeah, my it was
Okay.
high school where I went. Yeah, yeah.
Nice. So do you see the let's call it like the God, what is it? The education tract? I haven't paid much attention to that, but I remember back in the day it was, management information systems, right? You
Yes.
did MIS with an emphasis in electrical engineering or in I don't know what the other name was, but they taught you Active Directory and something, which was completely useless when you got out, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. Are they? Do you see anything from even the college level and the high school level where they're starting to tailor something? Because I've always thought there's never been a degree tract for IT professionals. In fact, I couldn't even tell you anybody in my team that has a degree in MIS or anything, right?
Well,
Some of them.
I have a
Do
degree
you?
I have a degree in information systems.
Oh,
I
do
did
you?
information systems, and actually, when I was doing information systems at Staffordshire University in the UK, which is well renowned, shout out to my old school. Um, there was actually two. There was a common first year, and then there was two paths you could take. You could go hardcore computer science, which taught you things like assembler and C++ and Fortran and all these programming languages, and you were kind of. And I always went, the nerdy guys go to that end.
Right.
And then the other side was information systems. So it started out as kind of computer science, information systems, and then it became information systems and computer science. And computer science was always like super technical. And those guys, they end up becoming CTOs, heads of engineering, that kind of thing. Information systems, and I'm still in touch. I'm still good friends today with people that I went to college with. And we have all ended up in senior leadership roles in either consulting companies or led heads of IT or CIOs of large companies. And the information systems guys were all taught more about, there was an element of psychology and sociology, and it was all about business analysis and the running of an IT function. So it was more analysis and design and kind of like the human aspect of IT. So I assume, and that was 30 years ago. So I assume the degrees and things, they must have degrees today that are focusing on this human aspect of running an IT function.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
So, but I didn't go to school in the U.S., so I don't know what colleges in the U.S. But what I do, I'm a firm believer today, especially to drive the right level of, diversity in an organization. Programs we've been running is a significant intern program and new college graduate, and one of the things we've done is to mandate, that those percentages are 60% female, so that we start to change the imbalance. So one of the leaders I was talking about earlier is a female leader that we've seen become a new CIO. So that is something I'm extremely, a strong advocate of, and I'm glad to see that so many companies are kind of like taking on a strong, diversity and inclusion stance, because it definitely is an area that needs to get rectified.
Well, I can't help but wonder if it's tied to the old guard, the old mentality of how to run IT. Because when we were looking, when I looked at the interns last year that we brought in, I brought in a marketing intern into an IT function, right? Data analyst. It was two girls that came in, and they were really good at it, and they were great additions to the team. And I think there's that mindset. I think there's a mindset, and it's disproportionate because you still have that some of the industry that's stuck in the old guard, which
there's people who use the easy excuse, I just don't have a pipeline. And I go, well, you're not looking hard enough, you're not creating a pipeline. So create the pipeline in your own organization, use the intern program, and even and then purposely set it so that it's a significantly higher percentage, female, and you'll get to where you need to get to. And it has certainly, I've taken that approach, and it has, definitely improved our numbers. We're still not where we need to be, but we're making good progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and hats off to you for the internship program. That's a great program, and we get a lot of value out of it. And it's great to see the interns in their showcases and
Yeah.
helping them, pitch to a CIO and show them what they did for their project. And
Well, and I'll
it's
tell you, the passion, the energy level I get personally from new college grads and interns is just, it's tremendous. I always tell people, if you ever feel like you've having a bad day, you start to just go spend a day with the interns, and the energy level is extreme. So they wake up
yeah,
every morning and they're ready to go.
you're ready to
So
go.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
very good. All right. Well, hey, I think this has been a really good chat, John. Thank you again for being the guinea pig and working through this with me on it. And as always, it was a really good conversation. So
Thank you, Justin, and totally enjoyed pulling on this thread. So there you go.